Hello and welcome to the Future Food Finance Podcast. My name is John Reynolds, the host. This week we've got another top-notch guest. We are joined by Ryan Sinnet, the co-founder of the US food robotics firm Miso Robotics. So thanks a million for joining us, Ryan. You're very welcome. Now, first up, can we just get a brief overview of Miso Robotics? Hopefully I've pronounced it right, and your own role too.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks for having me on, John. So Miso Robotics, what we set out to do, we've been around 7 years, and what we set out to do was really to revolutionize the food industry. When we look back, we saw this kind of evolution of technology, and we saw it really hitting this turning point about 10 years ago. We saw computer vision, robotics, decreasing cost of compute, and increasing availability and the capabilities that you could do with this compute. We saw that, and then we realized that there's a ton of applications that this opens, what you can do when you combine computer vision, robotics, and artificial intelligence. And then we thought, well, what's a good place to take this technology? And when you look at the food service industry, the humans have been cooking for a really long time, and there hasn't been a lot of innovation there. It tends to be one of the industries that technology left behind. And so we looked at that, and we looked at the economics of that, and it's a tough time if you're operating a food service restaurant right now. Profit margins tend to be in the single digits. You've got all kinds of price pressures. You've got rising wages. You've got rising cost of food. And it's also a squeeze on the labor market. In the United States alone, we have over 1 million person gap in the labor pool, and it's projected to grow beyond that over the next decade. So we looked at all of this confluence of factors and realized that there's a really big opportunity to bring in robotics, AI, and computer vision and build a suite of products in the kitchen space that would allow us to automate some of the tasks that people were previously doing, fill that labor gap to a large extent, and really fix that profit equation for food service operators.
Okay, that's very well explained. So I guess listeners will perhaps be familiar with robotics and automation in areas like logistics and car manufacturing, and even on the kind of delivery side of food and the grocery sector. But Miso, you're 100% focused on revolutionizing the restaurant kitchens then, yeah?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, obviously, robots have been around for decades upon decades, and there's a huge manufacturing industry. We've all seen those videos of Tesla factories building, the cars entirely with robots, but you don't see that in the kitchen. And so we are focused on bringing that to the kitchen, and we think the capabilities are there today.
Okay, that's great. So, I mean, I looked at your website and some of the videos. So from my understanding, your main product is a product called Flippy 2, which I think I'm right in saying is a robotic fry cooker. Now, just give us a bit of an overview of what it does and what its advantages are. It's effectively replacing humans, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So Flippy 2 is our fry cook, as you pointed out. And, it is built upon a technology, a robotics platform, artificial intelligence and computer vision platform that is extensible to other tasks beyond fry cooking. But when we looked at the market, we found that deep frying, at least in the United States, is a great entry point. And we wanted to start there because it's one of the challenging jobs. It's challenging to fill that role. It's, really hot standing behind those fryers. It's a tough job to work. And, we've gone into a lot of kitchens, talked to a lot of food service operators, all the big names you can think of. And, they're happy to really bring this in there. And their view is that they can take the labor, redeploy it up to customer facing roles, and that'll allow them to really create a better experience for the customers. And what our product does, though, specifically, is it's a robotic arm. It's on a rail. It's upside down. It's tucked away outside of the kitchen aisles. And that's really important because there's not a lot of room in these kitchens. It's behind a barrier, which keeps it safe and keeps it cooler in the kitchen, keeps it calmer in the kitchen. And it effectively operates a line of deep fryers. It takes food from an automated refrigerated dispenser, or it takes it from human input. And we have patents on that. And it takes the food and it runs it through the frying process. It deep fries it, cooks it perfectly every time, agitates the food so it doesn't stick together, dumps it out, and then makes it available as needed for the cooks in the kitchen to assemble the orders. And it really takes the operations of the kitchen and makes it a lot smoother.
Okay. So I think I saw there was some figures. I think you're saying it produces 30% more fried food than human staff kitchens in half the prep time. And just without getting too complicated, so where does the AI fit in then? Is that?
Yeah, there's a lot of different uses for AI in our product, but primarily there's two uses for it, which is computer vision. So when the user interacts with the robot, we give it food as a user, and the robot needs to understand what food that is so it can know how to cook it. So that's one of the technologies that really is just maturing now, but we can do that with extremely high accuracy. And it's critical for making the product a good user experience. And then the second part that the product directly uses is it takes the food and it needs to decide what order it should cook it in and how long, what should I put this food in here now, or do I have to wait? Should I do it in this order? And there's a good purpose to that because you can decide how you want to optimize your kitchen operations. Do you want to get as much food as possible, or do you want to fill tickets in order, right? As the customers, do you want to minimize the amount of time that the customer has to wait for food? So those are the two primary uses of artificial intelligence. But you can imagine that obviously we have a lot of data from these robots in the field, and we can use that artificial intelligence to understand operations of the kitchen overall and to make improvements in the overall operational efficiency of the kitchen. So there's obviously, with the data we're collecting, a ton of additional areas in AI that we intend to explore and create value for our customers with.
Okay, that sounds fantastic. So you mentioned customers. So can you talk a bit about who your customers are? And from my understanding, it's it's kind of purchased on a subscription as a service. So it's kind of, you do kind of a monthly subscription fee, and then there's an installation fee. Is that the model, or can customers buy Flippy, and I think you've got various other products? Can they buy them outright then?
No, you got it. So we don't sell it outright as a full upfront fee. We typically do an installation, and we charge a little bit for that. And then we do a monthly fee, a robotics as a service, or SaaS, if you will. And that's seems to be a pretty effective fee because a lot of these restaurants, not all of them, but a lot of them don't tend to have the ability to make that kind of capital outlay at the beginning. And so, if you extend that over the usage of the product, it gives them a faster ROI and makes it affordable for a lot of these restaurants, which again, operating on such slim margins that they're not sitting on reserves of cash. We've worked with a lot of different customers. Everybody's called us, I think, I would say, obviously exaggerating a little bit, but we kind of follow our customers in making announcements. But I'll tell you a couple ones that we're working with that have, we've announced publicly with. And number one is White Castle, and we've been working with them for over 3 years now, and they've been an excellent partner. They're a very innovative United States-based company that, been around 100 years. And we've deployed a number of robots with them, and you can see in the news, they've committed to rolling out much more broadly with their White Castle stores. So they've been using the product, and we've been working with them to help understand the use case and better develop it. And then the other one that I'll mention is Jack in the Box, another Southwestern United States primarily based chain. And they're excited about the product as well, and they're testing it out. And they've, they're having hard times, right? It's tough for them to fill all these roles. It's tough for them to meet the labor equation and the economic equation of the restaurants. And so they're very excited about the product as it's, enabling them to, from what they've seen, to kind of turn that equation on its head.
Okay, that's great. So I guess the restaurant and the fast food industry, that's kind of your bullseye market. And I did see an interview with your chief exec when he talked about kind of refining the product. I guess with all kind of robotics, that there is always a danger of kind of malfunctioning and breakdown. Can you talk a bit about that? And I mean, is that something you've had to work on or to refine at all?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, anytime you have a complex system, a robotic system, even an oven in the kitchen, you're going to have some kind of issues, reliability issues over time. And yeah, we've been primarily focused as of recently on improving the reliability of it. It's fairly reliable, but when you're operating a kitchen and it goes down, that's a big problem for the kitchen because they're losing revenue. So we understand the importance of that, and we're working to make that, as extremely high reliability. In terms of safety, though, I mean, we follow very rigorous safety standards. There's industry ISO standards, there's Robotics Industries Association standards, and whenever we design our robots, we do all kinds of risk assessment, hazard analysis, and we ensure that there's not really any safety risk. It's just making sure that the product is working reliably enough to meet the needs of a commercial kitchen that's putting out food at a very high pace during especially the rush hours of the day.
Okay. I mean, years ago, you used to see kind of videos of kind of pizzas and other foods on a conveyor belt, but that's totally different, isn't it? That's kind of automation, and I guess you look upon that as kind of not a forward, and you're obviously talking about robotics, which is a lot more kind of advanced and nuanced than those kind of automated kind of conveyor belt systems.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at frozen food preparation, right? You look at it's essentially a factory with food, and we don't necessarily look at it any differently. I think our view is that using robotics, and particularly these robot arms, it gives us a kind of flexibility. It allows us to get in and understand the market a lot quicker and iterate and get that product market fit before you would be able to do it with a traditional bespoke solution. It's not to say that one day we might not end up with a much simpler design for a given application, but I think that tool set, that platform that we built up around robotics, AI, manipulating the physical world, perceiving it, that it's kind of like the hardware version of software. With software, you can iterate every day, change it. We have 3D printers in the lab. We can go in, we can print parts, and that combined with the flexibility of the robot that we can change in software allows us to really be the first ones to market with a lot of these products and get the learnings, iterate on it, rinse and repeat until we really nail the product market fit. So I think that's the major benefit of robotics. And that's an advantage that I think that we have versus a more traditional automation, first solution.
Okay, that's great, Ryan. So just talk about, I've got some, all your product names seem, they're all kind of rhyming, aren't they? Or a few of them are. You've got
They are.
you've got. Well, I presume you had this is Flippy 2, so presumably there was a Flippy 1, and then there's also, you've got Chippy, Sippy, and you've got Cookrate. So can you just talk very briefly? They're all presumably at different stages of development. Are you still testing those, or are they in the market now?
Yeah, you got it, John. We do. We love the name at the end, ending with the Y. I just love the way it sounds, and I think a lot of people have really been excited about the name. So it's interesting. You mentioned Flippy. We did actually start Flippy. The reason it's named Flippy is because we started at the grill, and so a lot of people still think that we do that, but primarily, we've moved to the deep fryer, and we've got other applications as well that we're exploring. I would say we're primarily focused on bringing Flippy to market, but we have an innovation lab where we are exploring other products. As you mentioned, we have Cookrate Coffee, and that's a really interesting IoT type product. And what that can do is it allows you to put this product in your store, and you might have urns of coffee, and you can keep track of the temperature of the coffee to ensure you're always serving warm coffee. You can make sure that immediately when you run out of coffee, but it also uses AI forecasting to know how much and when you should make the coffee. And we've shown that can actually reduce coffee costs significantly. So another application of AI in the kitchen space. And then Sippy, it's a drive-through. It's primarily aimed for drive-through, but it's an automated drink dispenser machine. And it uses we took advantage of the fact that we're pretty good at robotics to be able to work with another drink manufacturer to build this machine that can pour a few hundred drinks an hour. And that's in development in our lab. We're talking with some big name partners right now and, figuring out where the great entry point for that to the market is. But, it's running pretty, it puts out a lot of drinks. And I think the one key innovation about that product, which makes it really great, is that we can lid these cups with the boba. If you've ever seen boba, they put those seal lids on, and it's a less expensive lid, better for the environment, and doesn't spill when you hand it through the drive-through to the customer. So that's an advantage that we have over the, if you've driven through some of these drive-throughs and seen these automated machines in there, that's one of the, I would say, major advantages of our machine.
Okay, that's great. That's a really a good clinical overview. So let's just talk about the business a bit. So just talk about you're in California, aren't you? And how many? What's kind of what's the staff head count and what's I mean, are you kind of lots of engineers? I guess is it? Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we are primarily located in California. We're located here in Pasadena, and early on, a lot of us were from Caltech, the California Institute of Technology. So when we founded the company, we ended up just kind of being really close by, and that was a little bit of our roots. That's 7 years ago, and we've gone through a bit of growth since then. Had some successful crowdfunding. Uh, I would say today we're at about headcount, internally who's working in the office, about 60 people, and it's primarily in engineering. We work with contractors as well, and we have some work overseas, and so there's a lot more people contributing and working on the business, of course, and touching the product. But primarily, it's research and development. We don't really have to have a lot of sales. In fact, it's a really interesting position because there's just not a lot of there's not a lot of people out there in the market that are offering the similar product, and so we're lucky people see us in the news and they call us. And so we've got the engineering team, and then the other team is the customer operations team. We deploy these things to the field, and we have to maintain and monitor them. And it's not a big contingent, but it is a part of our business that we intend to improve the robot to support headcount over time, and it's manageable now, and I think that is a number that we're tracking as an important number to grow the business over time.
Okay, that's great. So you mentioned overseas there. I think I saw a story saying that you maybe were trialing some of your robotics in the UK, and I think I saw another story about Dubai mentioned. So I guess you've got a massive kind of domestic market, and that's the focus for the time being, or is it kind of a dual approach, or are you focused on the US, or can you talk about those kind of international, the footprint you made over there then?
Yeah, I think we want to understand the international market. So, for example, we have a good number of patents filed, probably 11 issued at this point. And those are in the U.S. primarily. So, not only are we considering testing out and understanding the markets overseas, but we're also ensuring that we have a solid IP strategy overseas. So, we look at the International Patent Cooperation Treaty, for example, and make sure that we're leaving space open for those markets. We're all, since we're US based, we understand the markets here, and we understand how to do business here. So we're primarily focused, as you point out, on deploying in the United States. But, I think we're performing some exploratory activities, and that's correct. We did have a presence in the UK, and we were experimenting with Flippy there. And we were also, in the mall in Dubai, we were experimenting with the robot there as well. But again, those are more exploratory, early stage, understanding the markets in preparation for a later rollout. But we are primarily focused on the US markets.
Okay. And in terms of financing, so I think you've been 100% crowdfunded today. I saw there was a piece in evaluation of around, I think this might have been a while ago, about $500 million. I don't know if that's kind of a last public available valuation, but have you been all crowdfunded, if I can speak properly today then?
Yeah, well, we have not been completely crowdfunded, but we, as you might probably saw, we have raised a significant amount of crowdfunding. Initially, we funded, using private, family, friends, private investors. That was very early on. And then we took on some private venture capital. We started crowdfunding. We went into it actually in, right as the COVID-19 pandemic was hitting. And we didn't know what impact that would have, but we came out of that first round as one of the biggest, I think, success stories that we'd heard of to date in crowdfunding, if not the biggest. And so we did start crowdfunding a few years ago, and we've been doing that to some extent. But you could also see recently we partnered with Ecolab, which if you don't recognize the name, or for your listeners, you've seen it. They do all, but you may not have. And you'll remember it when you look at it, but it says Ecolab, and they sell sanitation supplies, and they're a huge organization worldwide with a huge sales staff. So we recently partnered with them, and they've also invested in us, and it's been an exciting partnership. It's a great synergy. They have a really exciting market, and we have robotics and AI expertise that is, has a ton of value potential in that market. So, we've raised a good amount through crowdfunding, but we've also raised through private and, other public investors as well.
Okay. And I guess, because, you're 6 or 7 years old, but I guess revenue streams, because you're still a relatively kind of embryonic company. So in terms of kind of a revenue stream at the moment, that will be kind of fluctuating. And I guess, is that kind of a key focus is getting a kind of steady annual revenue stream in as the product becomes, is rolled out and becomes more well-known then?
Yeah, a great point. We are still, I would consider us still in, the embryonic stage. I think that's a good way to phrase it. We have, some we don't have no revenue. We do have some revenue because we do have a good, number of deployments out there between our customers. But it's not the kind of revenue, that of a company that has a product that's at scale. Like if you walk down the street and walk into a restaurant and see a robot there and it's ours, that is, a different stage of the company. And so we're focused on bringing the product to market in with the right reliability. And I think we're looking to, we're coming upon that moment, that juncture very quickly. And once we do roll that out, it's a unit economics story because we do have a very strong unit economics for each robot we roll out. So as soon as we, get to, I think, that critical point of, okay, we're 100% ready, we should be able to, do a very quick rollout, and that will really cause the revenue stream to jump. So it's just making sure that we have all the ducks in the row before we really unleash it.
Okay, that's fantastic. So, you're not, I don't think because you read a lot of these kind of scaremonger stories about the future of AI kind of obliterating human jobs. But from my understanding, what you're saying is your robotics, the technology is kind of working hand in glove with, there'll still be a use for humans working in kitchens too, but perhaps not as many, or perhaps because there's a massive staff shortage in the US that these robotics are filling a much needed gap then.
Yeah, there's a lot of scare stories about that. Easy way to get press. The way I think of it is if you go into a kitchen, and you're a human, there's maybe 200 different tasks you have to do in a kitchen. And you could probably learn to take out the trash on your first go. But if you're a robot, it's not easy to learn a lot of these tasks. Now, we're building a platform that allows us to learn some of these easier, but we're not building, humanoid robots that can walk around and do everything. I don't know how far in the future that is. I've been in robotics a long time, and that's a tall charge. And those humanoid robots are expensive. And I think maybe at some point that value equation makes sense, but we looked at the kitchen and said, okay, what are the things that people do repeatedly and that they don't like to do? And we realized there are certain elements of cooking where that applies. The thing is, if you build a robot, the more it moves, the more value it creates. That's really the value creation mechanism. So if you're building a robot to take out the trash 3 times a day, it better be really cheap. And so, working with the customers, interacting with the customers, all that is a really big role that humans have to play. And, people do primarily these days go out for the experiential aspect, especially with the rise of these delivery services. You can just order food at home. So if you're going out for the food, a lot of people just order it. So they really do go out more for the experience. So I don't, it's hard for me to look forward and say that people won't have a place in the kitchen. I don't, maybe in the very distant future, but, in the meantime, there's a very big gap, and there's a much needed solution that has to come about in order for these businesses to be viable, in order to actually fill the need and the desire that consumers have for food at a price that's affordable.
Okay, that's an interesting part. This might be a random question, is there a kind of consumer intrigue then for people going to restaurants where they're just, intrigued and interested in your robotics and how the food's going to taste? Or is that more of a consumer-facing thing? Will there be any market for that?
Oh, I think there is. If there's a robot in every restaurant, maybe that's a different equation. But for now, I when we put out some of the first ones of these, we had people come from far and wide just to see these robots operate. And I think there's an aspect of it that it's like a human-like robot, and it's an arm. that makes it even more interesting. I think there's this visceral reaction you get. It's really it is spectacular. You look at it and I think you think, wow, that's how I would do it. And for some reason that really connects with people at, in the gut level. And there is a big interest in seeing these robots, and people will drive out to see them. And, technology and science, I think, has long fascinated people. And this is certainly no exception to that. So yeah, definitely. And I think customers are seeing once they put the robots in, and I don't know if I can attribute it to interest in robots, but they're visible in the most cases, and they are experiencing growth in sales. So whether or not that's just, the market growing or the robots, I'm not to say, but it's definitely something people are interested in seeing.
Okay, that's fantastic. Last couple of questions. So there was a quote from there's a quote from the CEO of McDonald's last year, which you're probably not a big fan, which he said robotics is I haven't got the verbatim quote, but I think he said robotics is not practical. In the idea of robots and all those things, while it may be great for garnering headlines, it's not practical in the vast majority of restaurants. Presumably you disagree with that comment, do you? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure I fully understand the context of his comment, but I can tell you that the restaurants we've gone into, when we look at the opportunities for robotics, I don't find that to be necessarily true. I think that customers have seen benefits from using our robots. I mean, we've confirmed that, and there's a huge, whether or not he's right about that, there's a huge desire for robots. A lot of people are sticking their toe in the water here, and we're getting tons of just an outrageous amount of inbound interest in sales. Everybody wants these things, so either maybe he has some specific idea in mind of what he means by that. I don't want to say he's wrong, but I would say that there's definitely a significant amount of value to be created with robotics in the kitchen space in the very short term.
Okay, that's great, Ryan. So last question, just talk about the challenges over the next kind of 2 or 3 years. And I mean, as I say, you're still a relatively young company, so talk about potential buyout and IPO would seem some time off, and you're probably not even, well, maybe you are considering it, but that's not the immediate future. But just talk about maybe 1 or 2 of the challenges and what you've got on the kind of roadmap for the next 12 to 24 months would be great to wrap it up that way.
Yeah, definitely. I would say for us, it's laser focus on delivering this frying application to market, rolling out with our existing customers and bringing on some new ones. And I think that, for this product to be successful, it has to be highly reliable. So we'll continue to focus on reliability. And the other issue is, like I said, people are putting their toe in the water and they want to understand the value equation. And, creating value and validating that in the market is, it's challenging to create those case studies. So we're working to create those, to understand and prove and connect the value, the additional revenue, the lower costs with the addition of robots to the kitchen. And I think once that, becomes more saturated, widespread, understood, and that is what really, and then you start to see, more and more robots rolling out. That is really what validates the market opportunity. And I think that, once you reach a certain critical threshold there, you start to, I've heard it called crossing the chasm, but you start to see it as, wow, well, this is, I now 100% believe this is the future. We're beyond the, early adopters, the pioneers. And now it's just, okay, how fast can we put them out there? So I think we're on a good track. I think as far as I know, I do look at the market. As far as I know, we're really at the pole position here. And, that's what we've heard from our, customers and potential customers we've spoken to. So we intend to just really keep the foot on the gas and just hopefully glide through over this chasm and start to get to that point over the next year where we are ready to just really start rolling these things out in mass. And I think once we get to that point, sure, I think we're, as good stewards of the shareholders, we're ready to look at opportunities, whatever makes sense for the shareholders. But I think that we've stumbled upon an opportunity here. That's a huge opportunity, and that could lead to a really significant value creation mechanism in Miso Robotics. And I think that shareholders are excited about what that potential might mean as an IPO one day.
Right, that's a great way to end it. Ryan, thanks very much. We're really very appreciative of taking time out to speak to us. So that's been the Future Food Finance podcast.